coming off the heels of Halloween, we're talking about Scream. Possibly the movie that signified the next wave of horror films after the 80s slasher movies. Because, let's be honest, horror movies, they follow trends, right? They follow trends because companies see what is working and what is bringing audiences out. So in the 50s, it was monster movies. In the 60s, I think it was more monster movies. It was pretty much monster movies until like the late 70s and 80s. And then we got slasher flicks because people stopped being scared of the unknown and alien territories, and they started being more scared of what's here at home. And there's plenty of video essays that you could watch talking about the psychology of audiences and horror movies and how certain audiences are reacting to certain things because of aspects within real life that make us scared. So for the 80s, it was the people hiding in our neighborhoods. There was a lot of domestic crimes and murders and blah, blah, blah. So then in the 90s, people started asking themselves, well, you know, fucking...
No, I think Wes Craven just got sick of all the bullshit, so he decided to make a movie making fun of it.
That's true.
And it was just really good.
It was really good. The first Scream movie... So we, over quarantine, we decided to watch every single Scream movie.
At the time, there were 4.
I don't know why we made that decision. I can't remember in good... We ended up doing a lot of things over quarantine. We played all of the Resident Evil games. We watched all of the Scream movies. We watched all of the Conjuring universe movies. And... it was by doing that I discovered one of my favorite games of all time and one of my favorite movies of all time. And with the first Scream movie...
Wait, was that the first time you saw Scream?
Yeah. This was the first time ever. The only Scream movie that I had seen at that time, which I think that was it must have been 2020. I had only seen Scream 4, and that was the first horror movie that I ever saw in theaters in 2011. I was 16, and I had a lot of fun with it. And going back and rewatching Scream 4 as an adult, that's a different story, because honestly, I feel like all of the movies in between 1 and 5 are just okay to plain bad. Scream 3, not good. But that first one and the last one, honestly, but the first one, that's where it all started. Matthew Lillard fucking kills it. Congrats, buddy, on Five Nights at Freddy's, by the way. Everyone... fans of this series really enjoying that one, and everyone else being like, nah, it's whatever. But it's making a lot of money. It's making video games movies looking real tempting to a lot of studios. Matthew Lillard is great. All of the cast, honestly, Jamie Kennedy does a really good job as, not Dewey, that's the police officer. Jamie Kennedy is the nerdy guy, the one that knows about all the movies.
Chuck.
No,
it's not Chuck.
It sounded like that.
What his name is.
Yeah, and who else? Courtney Cox. Speaking of Friends, she was great in the first Scream. And was it Selma Blair? No, it's not Selma Blair. Oh my God. Who's the main girl?
Sydney Prescott.
Yeah, Sydney Prescott.
Oh, her actual name. I don't know.
It'll come to us. Also Drew Barrymore in the beginning. If you hadn't grown up in the 90s and seen the trailers for Scream, which I hadn't, but I knew enough about Scream. I'm just saying, if you know nothing about the movie, then it'll be a total surprise to you when you click off this video or this podcast to go watch it immediately. Drew Barrymore isn't the main character, but she's the first girl that you see in the movie, because the movie itself starts with... it's very meta. It's essentially Wes Craven, the director of Nightmare on Elm Street, and probably a bunch of other really good horror movies that...
I think he did The Hills Have Eyes.
That sounds right. Or maybe Last House on the Left or something.
He does have a lot of credits.
Yeah, he is one of him and like John Carpenter, and he kind of pioneered the 80s as far as horror movies go and icons go. So when he made Scream, and he starts the movie with this scene of a girl watching a scary movie, and she gets a call from a guy who's like asking her if she likes scary movies and flirting with her, and then he's like, do you have a boyfriend? And she's like, why do you want to know? And he's like, oh, fuck, the sound is going popular on TikTok right now, too. Basically, you find out that he's been watching her the whole time, and then he murders her, and that starts the movie. I'm setting this up very poorly. It honestly might make you not want to watch the movie, but I promise it's really good. Yeah, it's just all of the trope subversion in the movie is great, where it acts as a great commentary on horror films, and also it is a great horror film on its own. It set up the idea that in a movie there can be multiple killers, which I don't know if it's probably been done before, but I think it was popularized by Scream, where at the beginning of the movie you think there's only one guy going around killing people in this ghost face costume, and then by the end you find out it's two guys, and they bought an identical costume, and they're similar in height, and that's how they're able to, it's so good, because you think that you don't know who the killer is, and then you think, okay, well, it's got to be either this guy or this guy or this guy. And then you find out that there are two killers, and you're like, no fucking way. Because I didn't know that about the movie. So when we got there watching it, for me for the first time, I was just blown away. It's so fun. It's a fun, scary movie. I think that's why it's so accessible for people, especially if you don't normally like horror movies. I feel like there's a lot more to it that, because it's making fun of scary movies, it's a little bit more digestible, because you're able to laugh along with them, and then the scary things happen, and then, I don't know. It serves as a great introduction to scary movies if you're not super into the horror movie world. But I don't know. Those are just my 2 cents.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
Fun movie. The whole series is really fun, especially when you get to the later ones, and like in the universe, they make movies based on the last movie, and they call them Stab in the Scream movies. So that's a whole fun aspect. It really just boils down to the characters and the performances.
Yeah.
Because you have all the other slasher movies, and it's you like the killer. That's why you watch them. Mm-hmm. But Scream, you like the mystery and the people.
Yeah.
And all that other jazz. Because you watch Friday the 13th, you ain't fucking seeing anyone in more than 2 movies, other than Jason.
Right.
So with Scream, you can follow like the 3. You got Cindy, Dewey, and
Courtney Cox.
Whatever. Fucking Wendy.
She's the reporter.
Sarah. Stephanie.
No. Oh my God.
Whatever. But you follow them, and the whole whodunit aspect is very fun.
Yeah, it also, because it at its core is a meta commentary movie, they can continue to introduce characters generations after the original Scream movie came out, because you have all of the kids of the original characters, you have their kids, you have people related to Sydney. I think Sydney's cousin is in one of the movies, and she ends up being the murderer. And they always make fun of the killer's rationale too, right? Like the killer is always like, oh, well, I wanted to be famous because I idolized the killer from, the original murders and blah, blah, blah. And then there's always a scene, every single movie, there's always a scene where a film nerd breaks down all of the tropes to look out for in the beginning. And so it's the entire cast, and they're always like, first of all, trust nobody, because anyone but then it gets more specific, where they're like, all right, well, in a reboot, because there's no ties to the original cast, you have to, you have no idea who it's going to be, because they're all new characters or whatever. And then there's in Scream 5, they use a different word that was like a requel, I think.
Requel, yeah.
Where it was like a sequel to the reboot that is its own continuity. And so they're like, so any surviving members from the last movie, they could be the killer because, for whatever reason. And it's just, the dialogue is always written so cleverly. When you're doing anything meta like that, you have to be acutely aware of how you're writing. And And also the kills are getting more and more creative. Like from the newest movie, I'm sure you've seen the trailers where they're on the train and it's on Halloween and everyone is dressed up as the Ghostface killer and they're trying to run away from the murderer. And it's just the way that they handle lighting and shot composition and the suspense and the best part about scary movies is the tension and the building and the releasing of tension, and then the sudden, like, oh, nope, he was there the whole time. The fifth movie does it really well. First movie does it really well. Every movie in between, the horror is okay, but it's, like you said, about the characters and their progression. And at the heart of the Scream franchise is kind of a loving story about found family and how, you know, surprisingly at the end of the first one, a lot of characters survive and you see them throughout the series and you get to see how their relationships have developed over the years and how Sydney moves out of the original town and she gets called back almost like a freaking superhero where like Nick Fury calls her and he's like, we got one more job for you. And she's like, God, I'm not trained. I'm not. Well, and then she ends up getting trained. Anyway, Neve Campbell is her name, who plays Sidney Prescott. So, anyway, yeah, man, the Scream movies, specifically the first one, it's always a good time. And the Ghostface mask, at least for the better part of the 2000s, was like the most popular simple costume.
I was Ghostface like 3 times as a kid.
Oh yeah, it's just easy. A black robe and a mask, and then one of those.
One time I had one where blood. I had like a pump, and like blood came down the mask. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it smelled like shit. Those masks smelled terrible.
Like the rubber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember that damn smell. It's the worst.
It never goes away because you wear it all day and then you sweat in it. And then you take it off to eat candy and you realize just how sweaty you are. And then when you go to put the mask back on, you're like, oh, dude, this fucking sucks.